Welcome to Hubs and Drivers, a podcast for building product marketers, sponsored by BLD Marketing. I'm Jeff Donaldson, your host. On today's episode, Plan Before You Go, planning tools for building product manufacturers. As a building products manufacturer, how well do you know your target audience? Do you know their pain points? Do you know their needs? And do you know what problem you solve for them? Locating and amplifying your brand's voice involves solving a complex equation, and it starts with strategic planning. Here at BLD Marketing, we have a very specific approach to that strategic planning process. Joining us today for insight and perspective and to walk us through that process is Dave Sladack, President of BLD Marketing. Dave, thanks for joining us.
Great to be with you, Jeff.
So, I know that we always gather both quantitative and qualitative data when it comes to that strategic planning, but where do we start? How do we kick off those planning activities?
Yeah, so one of the first things we do with whether it's a new client or even existing clients that are looking to launch a new product or do a new campaign, we believe in just starting the whole conversation off with a questionnaire. And especially with new clients, what we find is if we can put some questions down, like 14, 15 questions, and they range from the goals and objectives to some of the pain points and challenges, and we can send that to a client in advance, and they take the time to actually fill it out and send it back to us versus just interviewing them, we end up getting some really, really great initial insights out of that can really help guide the proposal. So that gets us started in the right direction, and then to augment that, we'll look at any of the existing marketing materials and research and campaigns that the client has done.
So we use an exercise we like to call audience task maps, and I know that's specific to BLD Marketing. What are they and why are they critical?
Yeah, so our task maps are meant to really delve into a specific target audience. And so what we found to be really, really beneficial is to ask our client to come and do a workshop with us and bring in a cross-functional team. So it's very often we'll have the CEO and some of the C-suite represented. We'll have the marketing folks, salespeople, engineers, product people, customer service people. And what's really fascinating about it is when we get that diverse group of people together, we can tell that now they're getting some opinions on, within each other that they probably haven't discussed in a forum like this before. And our whole job is to moderate it. So we ask questions. There's 8 questions that we ask, talking about the target audience, their needs, their barriers, etc. And we just listen and we take copious notes. And then we take that document that we get, and we'll do one for each of the target audiences that we agree to really focus on. We'll come back and we'll crystallize that all into a specific page that tells a story about that target audience.
Now, we obviously want to look at the competition as well. It's important to know what the competition for our clients is doing. What is our approach to auditing the competition for our clients?
Yeah, we do audits for a number of different things. One of them is a competitive audit. And the main thing we're looking for there are just gaps. Where do we have opportunities to stand out? So we'll do some framework where we'll look at our brand, our client's brand, and then we'll look at competitive brands. And then we list out attributes and so forth. And we look and see, okay, well, what do we do well that they don't? What do they do well that we don't? And that helps us guide what our positioning is going to be, right? And longer term, it helps us guide into maybe some service gaps or product gaps that need fulfilled.
Now, how about the target personas that we create? That's better understanding the audiences. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we do target personas for both B2C use and also B2B. Okay, on the B2C side, we have access to really, really strong data. So we're looking at media consumption habits. We're looking at a lot of demographics and the typical things that come out of a persona. But frankly, what we're really looking at for the B2C and the B2B both are values and attitudes. And so there's ways that we can bring that out. One, through data on the consumer side, we have resources that can really look at various attitudes and perceptions that consumers have on a national basis about a variety of different topics. On the B2B side, we just have a ton of experience because we do a lot of qualitative interviewing of customers and, whether they're architects or contractors or engineers. And so we've got a pretty strong knowledge about what their pain points are, what their senses of fulfillment are. And so over time, we've been able to cultivate those into personas. And then if we need a specific, instance for a client, like maybe a certain type of architect or a certain type of engineer, we'll go out there and we'll do that exercise to really determine what those pain points are, what those needs are, and so forth.
So next in the process, the planning process, is what we call customer journeys. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so we do a customer journey, and the way we do it, it's more of like a worksheet of sorts, okay? So, we follow the customer process, right? So a customer's looking for, they have a need, so they recognize a need. From there, they're looking for alternatives, and then they're evaluating alternatives. Eventually, they put all that together in an integrated fashion, and they're ready to make a decision. If it's an architect, they're ready to specify a product. If it's a consumer, they're ready to buy, okay? But then we follow it post-purchase as well, looking at what that experience was like, and then also the sentiment that develops from it. Were they positive or negative with that experience? And so that's kind of our roadmap. And then what we do is we ask a series of questions at each stage. What are they doing? What are they saying? What are they thinking? And when we can do that and plot it out stage by stage, we can really start to develop some deeper insights based upon some other planning tools that we've done. This helps bring to life, what that journey might look like. We're also doing a digital journey, and our digital journeys are really meant to say, okay, look, we're spending a lot of our clients' money on digital advertising. So what do we do when we get them to that hub, which would be either a landing page or a website? Right. So our digital journeys really look at and say, okay, with each of the specific media or earned media, paid media, whatever it is, social media, what are we doing when they get there? And we're mapping out a journey that says, okay, we want them to go to this page, we want them to download this content, we want them to fill out this form, and we map out every single instance where we have some marketing activity. And that really helps us. We do this up front. That really helps us really structure what the creative response needs to be from a content perspective, from a messaging perspective, because when you're talking to somebody who's just coming onto the site, it's a different conversation than someone that's been 3 pages deep in what their expectations are.
So we also want to land on core messaging to understand what the brand's voice sounds like. How do we go about doing that? What's our approach there?
So Jeff, we start everything with a message strategy, okay? One of the key elements of that message strategy is to first develop value props for each of the targets that we have. The trick to that is to make sure we're consistent with the brand across the board, making that meaningful differentiating point come through, but doing it in a way that it's meaningful to an architect, which is a different meaning for an engineer, a different meaning for a contractor. And when we can do that and maintain the consistency of the brand, now we're adding value specifically to each of those target audiences. Once we have that established, we do something called benefit laddering. We start with an attribute, we determine what the attribute is of that brand and how it's meaningful to that specific target audience. We take it another step and we say, okay, what's the actual benefit of that brand? And then a step further and say, what's the emotional value of that brand? So when you think about it, it's like the attribute is what the product does, the benefit is what it really provides, and the emotional value is why that's so important to that specific target audience.
Yeah. Relevance.
Yes, exactly. It's the relevance. And so once we have that structured now from a strategic standpoint, between that and the positioning, we're ready to crystallize that into a creative brief and hand that over to our creative team so that they can create a message platform and then the creative campaign.
So finally, we arrive at what's called a strategic decision map. What's the purpose of that exercise, and what does it tell us when we're complete?
Yeah, so this is a great tool that we use. It's a plan on a page. And what we're able to do at a high level is take a look at the overall decision process that a customer goes through. Awareness, education and engagement, building conviction, and then taking action. And we're able to look at that and say, okay, for each of these stages, we structure a goal for each. We look at what type of activities should be really included in each of those stages. And then we map out KPIs for each of those stages, and then a percent of investment level that we think the client should be at for each of these stages. So, we have some clients who are just startups, and obviously they have to spend a lot more time in the awareness stage. For more established brands that we have, they're going to be a little bit lower in the funnel. And so when we show clients this tool, it's on one page, it's a really, really high level view of what the marketing activity will be like for the year. It's a great way for them to say yes or no and to make refinements. And the beauty of it is we use this year to year. So like year 1 looks totally different from year 2 if we're doing our job right. And we're able to take the funding and really move it a little further down the funnel where, we have a lot more of the awareness already built.
This is a deep dive, and sometimes I know clients, when they look at a process like that, it can be maybe foreboding or even a little overwhelming, but let's talk about how critical it is to start there versus jumping into developing creative right away. We need to know what we sound like first, right?
Yeah, absolutely, it's critical. And one of the things we tell our clients is, look, we have to invest this time and frankly make an investment financially into this planning process. It's not overwhelming, but it does take a little bit of time, right. And and we always like to say measure twice and cut once.
Yes.
And so if we can spend the time up front really just making sure we understand at a deep level the customer and a path that we think is the most effective for a brand to take, we know we'll be successful, and it's proven out. And by the way, with the planning process, it isn't all internal either. We have a lot of strategic partners that we use for specific purposes to get deeper into customer insights and so forth. Whether it's for research or for specific types of specialty needs, I think the beauty of our approach is looking internally at our stakeholders, doing our own qualitative with our stakeholders' customers, with our clients' customers, and then reaching out and working with partners when it's really needed.
Measure twice, cut once. I like that. It's a good metaphor. Dave, thanks very much.
Sure thing.
So one of the keys is to get perspective from a variety of stakeholders within and outside the organization in the planning process. That means the executive team, perhaps some of your customers, your sales staff, and more. And that way you get a comprehensive perspective as you locate your brand's voice. Would you like us to cover a specific topic on hubs and drivers? Email us at info@hubsanddriverspodcast.com. That's info@hubsanddriverspodcast.com. That's all for this edition of Hubs and Drivers. I'm Jeff Donaldson, your host. Join us next time.